My name is Mike Cush, and we have Phil Dodd and Paul Johnson and Jim Averwater are the four people that represent this SIC committee, which is the Select Infrastructure Committee. And this is a continuation of a meeting that we had a few weeks ago. And we have some new faces, and we have some city folks, which is great. We have Representative Tim Rudd. So, Tim, thank you very much for coming. You appear to be the only representative or legislative representative that answered the invite. So
helps to be a realtor. My time's a little freer usually.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And you took roll, Rachel, basically right over or you got pretty much everybody that's in attendance. For those that, well, let's just do a quick roll call because I know some folks probably don't know one another. So, Pettis, if you, well, up at the front table, go ahead and just do a quick.
Ryan Leith, the Avison Group with the Home Builder Association of Central Tennessee.
Perfect. Pettis, go ahead and start.
Pettis Reed, County Commissioner, District 8.
Chad Lehman, Mayor of Eagleville.
Thank you, Mayor. For
Brian Hercules, Town Manager, Town of Smyrna.
Thank you.
Mary Esther Reed, Mayor of the Town of Smyrna.
Lisa Miller, Finance Department.
All right.
Rhonda Allen, County Commissioner, District 11.
Nick Christensen, County Attorney.
Michael?
Michael Rather, County Commissioner, District 3.
Derek Collins.
Susan Allen, Rutherford Neighborhood Alliance.
Hunter McDonald, Red Realty, and also representing MSAR.
Tim Tips, Wilson Bank and Trust, representing the Home Builders Association, Southern Tennessee, and also MTAR's Government Affairs.
I'm Rex Brown, Political Affairs Manager for the Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors.
Greg Myers, representing Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors.
Lorenz Scarlato, United Real Estate, Government Affairs, Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors.
United, say that again? United Real Estate
Yeah.
Government Affairs.
No, United Real Estate is my.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right, how about the middle row back there?
Kyle Brown, Assistant Administrator, Laverne.
Matt Teller from SEC.
Jason Cole, Mayor for the City of Laverne.
Well, welcome, Jason. Thank you for coming.
Steve Sandlin, Deputy to the Mayor of Rutherford County.
All right, and Tim, go ahead and introduce yourself for those who
Well,
may
you already know. I'm Tim Rudd, State Representative, 34th District,
Okay.
which is southwest, downtown Murfreesboro and all of southwest Rutherford.
Okay, fantastic. And I got your card in the mail, by the way, yesterday. So I'm going to try not to pick on you very much today.
I'm very sensitive. So.
And if I do, I'm not picking on you as Tim Rudd. I'm picking on you as the next level up of government. Is that fair? Just say yes. All right. So let me explain again the purpose of this meeting. This group was tasked by Public Works Committee and the Planning Commission, which Jim Averwater and I are on, to once again review and look at alternate ways, alternate sources of potential funding for, in this case, infrastructure. And we are defining infrastructure as roads and drainage as associated to roadways. That's it. We're not talking about schools. We're not talking about anything else. The purpose of that is to take the burden off of taxpayers and see if there's alternate funding outside of the property tax. Not a new discussion, as most of you know. What we are facing is that we live in a really cool county. It's the it county. It's the hot county. Our growth has been incredible over the last several years. And if I may, you'll enlighten me for a second. And Brian, as you are most recently chief cook and bottle washer at the chamber, You probably have these numbers memorized, but first of all, let me say that Rutherford County ranks from a cost of living index versus the national average, which is 100, 99.6, which is incredible. Murfreesboro and Smyrna are ranked number 2 and 3 as the fastest growing cities in Tennessee. And Rutherford County is ranked 6th largest employment increase in the nation. And we added over 1,500 jobs in Rutherford County. This is 2017 statistics. That number is even greater, which almost $400 million in capital investment. But let me tell you this. Rutherford County population right now, as of 2018, is about 321,000 plus. 2023's projection is almost 350,000. And I don't need to bore you with the average household income and things like that, but the projected 2023 is 350,000 people. As a planning commissioner, and as Jim is a planning commissioner, we get reports that that number could be touching 700,000 by 2050, comparing us to the city of Denver. Rhonda and I and others who are involved in the Power of 10, the 10-county growth conference, that phrase of being compared to Denver is a quite often heard term. So, what we are faced with in planning is a tremendous amount of growth in subdivisions in this county. Like I said, it's a cool place to be. And what makes it a cool place to be are the 4 things that everybody looks at when they think of a place to live. You have a great economy, you have low taxes, you have superb education, and you have really fun things to do, right? You have great restaurants, great shops, greenways, great place to live. And if I didn't mention low tax base, you have a low tax base. So, fun place to live. Now, the thing that's disturbing to me in this committee that's recently happened to our neighbors, you know, we have a development tax. That's all we have. Powers Act limits us to just one thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. Williamson County, which many of our developer friends and real estate friends are very familiar. To do business in Williamson County, you have to write a check with lots of zeros. Anywhere from the $20,000 to $40,000 range to participate in Williamson County. Wilson County, just in the last few weeks, added to their adequate facilities tax an additional $2,000, bringing their total to $5,000 per new roof. We're at $1,500, and we're locked in at $1,500 for development tax. So not only are we experiencing tremendous growth, now that our Williamson County neighbor and our Wilson County neighbor are more expensive places to develop, the target even is bigger on Rutherford County as a place to come and build. So that's good, and that's bad. It's bad because as a vice chair of planning and chairman of public works, we have reached a capacity where our little $1,500, which has been the number since 1996, is not adequate. One of the problems with that development tax is that was never indexed for inflation, which is a sad thing, because as I asked Lisa Nolan to do a little investigation, that $1,500 in 1996 in today's dollars would be $1,850. And in those years of that lost possibility of generation of income, we would have lost we did lose $17.5 million. Just the fact that that development tax was not indexed for inflation. So maybe, Tim, your counterparts could help us fix that. A simple sentence in the Powers Act or development verbiage to index that for inflation would help. And we're locked in. We can't raise it. We can't do anything with it. That's it. It is what it is. The Powers Act of 2006, I believe, the County Powers Relief Act, was passed, and that basically said you can have an adequate facilities tax, or if you've already got a development tax in place, you can keep that. Your choice. But you can't do anything else. You can't do a real estate transfer fee. You can't create any other kind of taxes or impact fees. You really can't do squat. Which is offensive to me, because that's basically the government telling the small government what you can and can't do with your county and your problems and your issues. And that was done in 2006?
4-6.
Yeah.
June of '06 is what I think.
Okay, so what's the math on that? 13 years ago? Lots happened 13 years ago. And the development tax was done in 24 years ago.
Well, yeah, 96, 97. 24
years ago. So who would have thought where this county would have been 24 years ago when they came up with $750 and $750? Again, that number's a little offensive to me. So anyway, the Powers Act comes along, and you can use any adjective you'd like, but it basically neutered our ability. It hamstrung us. It stymied us. It basically said, look, this is what you got. It's all you can do. There ain't no more. If we chose to eliminate the development tax and initiate the Powers Act, which is the facilities tax, you can go up to $1 per square foot of home, but you can only increase 10% every 4 years. So if you look at what we have now and what we could have if we eliminated the development tax, it's about a wash. Really haven't gained anything. The other thing that the development tax lacks is that's one fee for no matter what size house or how big a lot you have. If you build a 1,000 square foot house or a 15,000 square foot house, you're just paying the same price. So it's inequitable. So these are some of the things that we're trying to, for the past several decades, trying to deal with. So I get back to that thing where we have reached capacity. We're at a tipping point. Our roads have a capacity. We recently, the tipping point came when we purchased property for a couple of new schools, one particularly in Pettis' part of the world, where we spent a lot of money for land because the school board wanted to go with the campus. You know, the new trend is a campus kind of a thing. And the problem is there wasn't much attention to the road infrastructure to get to these new schools, in particular the one in Pettis' district. What we found was it's going to cost the county out of our general fund, because we don't really have a fund for new roads, which is another thing that blows my mind, about $7 million. So out of thin air, we need to come up with $7 million over the next several months to be able to get 2 school buses to pass on the roads leading to this property, which they can't do now. This is the kind of problem we have all over the county. Growth is great. Growth is good. Development is what we need. It's an economic driver of Middle Tennessee. It's an economic driver for the state. Rutherford County is. I told everybody at our last meeting that I'm a pro-growth guy. I don't necessarily speak for everybody on the committee or the full commission, but we are at a point where even not only our roads get capacity, but our checking account is at capacity. Phil Dodd's water beaker has a capacity. My coffee cup has a capacity. My checking account has a capacity. If I go over it, I'm charged exorbitant fees. If you overfill your water jug, you have a spill and somewhat of a catastrophe. The city, when they reach sewer capacity, they impose a assessment until they can repay or recoup their expenses for sewer. May not be a bad idea to do that for roads. So, long story short, we are hamstrung with the legislative acts, public and private, that are in play now. And we chatted about this with our real estate and developer friends at our last meeting. They seem to get the joke. They understand. We can't keep doing what we're doing. But then to get relief, county, full commission, doesn't have the authority to do anything. So we have to look to our legislative body to help us make changes to some old acts that then require General Assembly help to get things changed. So that's what we're ultimately going to have. And what may have been good 14 years ago or 24 years ago, nobody could have foreseen the future of where Rutherford County is at this point in time. So, like I said, we're at a tipping point and we need some help. Now the cities, and the reason why, you're probably wondering why you're here, because the cities have a little more free reign than what a county does. You can impact fees at a much easier, multiple ways where we can't do that. But I think perhaps why you all are here and why we asked you here was one of the options that we discussed, which again is not a new scenario or a talking point, is real estate transaction fees, which has some real merit. It is somewhat inflation-proof, where a development tax, when the economy turns, so does new housings and new roofs. But real estate transaction fees seem to be somewhat steady. This idea has been pitched for decades. It keeps getting shot down. In one case, even termed illegal. Now, developers would love to have a transaction fee because the trade-off would be perhaps they would support a transaction fee if we eliminate a development tax. We could raise more money if we had a transaction fee, real estate transaction fee, and that would affect residential and commercial. And I think there's real potential, and I would love to drive that train, but we would have to have help from Nashville to get that changed, because that legally has to change through Powers Act language would have to be changed. Because not only does the Powers Act, Tim and others, not only does it restrict the fact that you know, if you have a development tax in play, you can use it, or you can do the dollar per square foot and the 10% every 4 years. But it also says that this is the only legal means to do anything. If you want to do anything else, you can't. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't speak legalese like our county attorney does. But the Powers Act basically says that this document is all powerful. It's like Oz behind the curtain. You can't do anything because the Powers Act says you can't do anything. Transaction fees are illegal. Development tax, if you've already got it in play, that's great. If you don't, you can't do it. It is the power to be all end all powers. If you want anything changed, you got to change the Powers Act. And we can't do that. We need Nashville to do that. So that's where we are. There's things we could do, but then that is more of a user fee. Like we could increase the wheel tax, and we could designate that extra monies to go directly to a road fund kind of a thing. We could perhaps even initiate a special district type of fee where we have a really troubled hotspot, such as the new school area, where these roads are very inadequate, where, like I said before, 2 school buses could not even pass, enact some kind of a special district fee that would be temporary. But that's going to take, pardon the pun, an act of Congress to get that in play. So I think you can see by my pontificating on what little power the county has to do their own business, we're in a pickle. And we have some smart folks in the room, and we're certainly open to ideas and suggestions. And Tim, if you have any comments or suggestions.
I'm just here to listen.
Okay. We're open for suggestions.
I can't speak for the 5 members.
Oh, I know. And what we will, they were invited to attend, but we may have to take the mountain to Mohammed, as the old saying goes, and have an audience with them, because they need to be our torchbearers to try and enact some changes and get before the General Assembly and make some changes.
Well, I will say this, not to argue for or against anything you're
Sure.
saying or what happened decades. I will say this, the environment we're in.
Yeah.
There's 6 of us, 2 senators and 4 House members. And you mentioned 10, there's 10 to up to 14 high-growth counties.
Yeah.
Most of the other counties either aren't growing or they're actually declining. There's no revenue coming in. All right. Of the high-growth counties, we're a minority in the legislature. There's only so much money in the pot. For every dollar we take out to put in high-growth counties, and there is a lot going into high-growth counties. The governor puts it in, TDOT puts it in, but for every dollar we take out, we're having to take out from the counties that aren't growing, and there's more of them than us. So they're very resistant. So when it comes time, even when it comes time to change, like you're talking about special acts, a lot of the rural legislators don't like giving up that power.
Yeah.
I don't want it. You should be able to do what you want. But, so we have to fight that. Many people say, we're high growth, we need more money. Well, like I said, we've got to convince all the other legislators to give us 10 counties more money at their expense. And that's not always easy. So when it comes time to that, it would help for all of you interests in the county and the cities to come up and help us lobby the other legislators and explain to them what you're going through, rather than us just telling secondhand. And a lot of times we don't get any information from all of you until the very last minute. Like right now, this hasn't been not meeting with us. And of all the municipalities and all the governments in Rutherford County, probably the two that's best at communicating with us legislators their needs is Smyrna and Eagleville. I can't speak to Laverne because I don't represent Laverne. I'm nowhere near your district, so I don't know the communications, but Smyrna has been by far the best to really communicate with us in long-term planning and working with TDOT and come to Capitol Hill and having special meetings and say, here's what we need, and the state explaining, here's the timeline of what we can do and planning for that. And I want to congratulate the mayor and Brian for that. But a lot of times we just don't get any communications at all to the last minute when there's a panic. And sometimes this takes a year to convince people. So just to let you know the environment we're working in too. And I mean, nobody that's in office now in our delegation was not in office in any public office when all this originally occurred. And I was the only one that was around sitting in the same seats now and hearing when the county commission met back in the 90s. So I'm more familiar with it than most, what you're talking about. But anyway, I just want to let you know it's not an easy thing just to go up and sponsor a bill and get it passed. We got to convince somebody else to give up something.
Yeah.
And we may need your help.
Well, a couple things. You know, every year, I know we have a chance to sit down with our legislative body, and this topic comes up every year. And it seems to fall on deaf ears. And we hear things like, oh, you need to sharpen your axe, or, you know, you have to do better. And Tim, I'm telling you, those are offensive words, because basically they're not listening. They're doing political speech. Is all they're doing. Because when somebody like that says you need to, you know, no taxes, you need to sharpen your axe, they're basically slapping all 21 commissioners in the face is what they're doing. Because we run a really lean county. Paul, you've been a commissioner off and on for a long time. Would you not agree that we run a very tight, lean ship, and we are very cognizant of every dollar we spend?
We try to get the most bang for the buck.
And Lisa, you know, we all know that, 75% of our budget is school
and
or
debt.
capital
School
or
and
debt.
debt-related.
Debt-related to schools.
Yes.
So when 75% of every tax dollar collected goes to schools, and the other big chunk goes to the sheriffs and public safety, there ain't a whole lot left for the rest. And there's a lot more than roads that needs the money. So I find a lot of things wrong with government as the longer I sit on it. But for these kind of powers acts to take away a county's power to do with what we want, or to enact impact fees or taxes as we want, to help take the burden off of property taxes, voters, constituents, I just don't understand that. Maybe I have too much common sense, I don't know. But Tim, you're right. We need to do a better job with communicating with our legislative body. We know this takes a lot of time, but I will tell you, every year we raise our hand and say we need help, and they don't initiate any communication, maybe any better than we do. But that's just my 2 cents. So, what can we do? Does anybody in the room have any suggestions on what we can do? This group is open for any and all discussion, because you know what we don't want to do is we don't want to do what Wilson and Williamson have done or are looking at doing, and that is to put tools in place to slow growth or to force a developer to pay for more road frontage improvements, such as a traffic shed. I talked to the mayor of Wilson County last week because he and I happen to both be attending a infrastructure academy, 6-week Citizens Academy workshop thing but anyway. They're looking at traffic sheds, which basically means, for those who don't know what that is you look at road capacity. If you want to put 400 houses on a county road, you look at road capacity. And if the road can't take that, you either have to reduce your development or you pay for the road out front. It's going to hurt. I'm telling you, it's going to hurt. The other choice, and again, this is just Mike Cush talking, the other choice is just to put a governor on growth until we can catch up financially with road improvements or road expansions. That's the big M word. And I'm not saying anybody's talked about that but me, because as you know, we can't talk about things. But something's got to give. Something's got to give. So I've talked a lot. I'm going to let you guys vent for a little bit.
Hi, do you have a copy of the Powers Act?
I think I have a summary of the Powers Act.
It's been a while since I looked at it, but it seemed like when Mayor Burgess was in office and we were looking at it then, there seemed to be so I wanted to double check before I spoke.
That's a summary, an executive summary, but it may have the information you're looking for. I will tell you that the development tax nets us about $6 million a year, which half of that goes to general fund and the other half goes to debt service.
But that's not all, that's not every year.
That's an average.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an average.
We have 1 year down to $865,000.
Yeah.
You know, our highest year was 04-05 when it was 7.7.
And that 50-50 towards general fund and debt service is, of that $7 million, how much is going to capital improvements, which was its original intent?
Half. Half goes, I mean, when the money comes in, it goes half to debt service, half to capital projects. Now, when we talk about capital projects as you go through, do you want me to?
Yeah,
pass this out?
Lisa, you have the floor.
Okay. Can you pass it out?
Yeah. You need a copy?
I got it. I'm just going to give you, because in talking to Commissioner Johnson, it was more, I was like, what have we spent it on? So this front page comes from...
Let's get some out in the road, too.
This front page is from from Misty's office, Tanya's building codes. This gives you how much we received each year. And, the first 1, 2, 3, 4 years, that tax was at $750,000.
Ron, make sure some gets back to the MTAR guys. Maybe a Hunter would want to...
I'm giving you this, and it's kind of sloppy because the accounting of it has changed over the years. So the first page this is how much we've collected through September in total. Half of it at the bottom, we've collected $96 million since 96-97 through September of 2019. Half went to debt service, and that's just paying towards schools, and then the other half is general capital projects. This next page kind of mushes up from 96 to 2012 and how monies were spent. So it's all over the board. We've done our ambulances, fire trucks, convenience center trucks, adult maintenance building, the firing range, work on juvenile detention, community care roofs. So while we've had we have a lot of little projects that we've taken care of this. Tennis courts with $1.2 million. Libraries, we did one in Smyrna. anyway, so that's 2012. Then this next page is a summary of just how the accounting was done at this time. It all went to one fund and then it got transferred out. So the second page is the monies that came through here transferred out into the general fund and how the general fund spent it on the various projects.
They're going to projects as opposed to operating expenses for those departments.
None of it,
Just wanna make that clear.
none of this is
If anybody's
operating.
listening,
It
none
is,
of it goes
it's
to
buying
operating.
capital. And it's not necessarily we bought or built a building. We would have bought some capital computers and cars and
Yeah, sheriff's cars, deputies' cars.
a lot of cars.
Yeah.
We bought a lot of cars. So, anyway, and then, starting in 12-13, the top part is, how you read this is how we spent it. The bottom part would be what we planned into the next year. So you've got several years of not really nice, easy way to pull this.
Through 18.
Yeah, through all the way into how we go
September.
into next year. So that, my thought was, this committee just wanted a flavor of what have we done with it.
Yeah.
So half of it, for sure, went to debt service to build buildings that we bonded.
Okay.
Okay?
So the debt service is not just general, debt service for capital improvements. This is a capital improvement fund,
Right.
earmarked.
And capital. It's for capital. For me, it's anything that's got a 700 account number.
If we wanted to reallocate some of that to a specific fund, like a road fund?
Okay,
Do we have
so-
to have some kind of
So-
an act to do that?
Who was it that, the analogy is a balloon. You squish it here, squish it here.
Yeah.
So if you just look at this last page, when I say squish it, we've got a lot of capital that we buy every year. And so we've used, we estimate an amount that we think it's going to come in and we apply it to capital. So anything that kind of comes above that, we set aside, it's set aside for something else. So if you come in and say, Lisa, I don't want you to budget any of it until we tell you to budget for it, then I need to come up, I need another 1.6 million in the general fund to come out of property tax to take care of sheriff's vehicles, GIS, fire, and OIT. Those are our big things, the flyovers, and those are the big things that have come out. So it will create a hole. We can do that if that's, but you got to know, we got to fill the void.
I'm going to
So,
jump
yes, you
in,
can.
Lisa and Mike. I think we're losing this crowd. If I may be so bold.
Yeah, please do.
So guys, Mike had a good recitation of kind of where we've come from, where we are, but a few bullet points. Our hands are tied on revenue that we can present to the county commission to spend. And so we have relationships with all of our department heads, eye-to-eye, person-to-person relationships in Rutherford County with our department heads, those who levy the taxes and those who spend the money. Okay, so it's symbiotic and it's local. And it's eye-to-eye. I go to church with them, I shop with them. I encounter these folks as our friends in our community. The road board has a similar relationship. Road board, group of men and women directing a body of revenue through a department head, and they have a source of revenue. Gas tax is a big part of that. And then we've got a third big wheel is the school board. School board functions to spend the revenue, and we either approve or deny the revenue. Okay, so I just want to highlight Mike's comment and Paul's confirmation. We think we're a pretty frugal county. That was critical for me coming from the construction world, development world, and real estate world. It was critical for me to come in here and see that, my goodness, we have run frugally. I was very impressed and very pleased. And I had the shocking revelation that this is a revenue problem, which is a rather fiscally conservative person. That's an interesting thing to have to embrace. We have a revenue problem. So we've painted some pictures here. Our hands are actually tied on revenue by a state act. And you guys have probably watched in the paper over the course of the last decades, we all bump into, here's an obstacle. None of us have been willing to chip away at that obstacle. It sounds so daunting because it's going to take years. And so here we are. I'm not willing to wait years. We can continue to chip at that long term, but we need some short term. I don't say short term. We need some long term solutions that we can grab in the short term. Okay? So I digress. So our only source of significant revenue is property tax, period. Is that, Pettis, you agree? Rhonda? We were shocked to find out that is our main source. That's why we're coming to y'all. The realtors, the developers, the mayors, the state legislators, the home builders, the engineers in our community. We don't want to keep going to the property tax person and saying simply pay us more. For one thing, it's bad optics. It may be good revenue generation, but the mobs have their pitchforks at the gate, and they're saying enough, putting on our back. The real estate development world has to participate. We are an industry, one of the greatest revenue generating industries in the community. We employ a lot of people. We're not bad guys.
Right.
I don't know that we're going to go to everybody just spitball ideas. Maybe we do. But at the very least, I want y'all to leave here knowing that we're in the same pool of employment. We're employers and employees with the same bucket of revenue, expending it on local costs. Okay, so we're not here to say we're developers to support developers, we're going to protect developers. We're not here to say we just want to support and protect the property taxpayer. Man, we've got to have a symbiotic, collaborative relationship. And for the first time in our history, and Tim's been here as long as anybody, you pay attention to Rutherford politics, it's the first time we've had realtors and developers and engineers, and now, gratefully, mayors in the same room, okay? I don't know how far we can get today, but we must collaborate in the same room, in my opinion, from this day forward. So, you may not have suggestions today. Hunter was with us last week, 2 weeks ago. So, you with me on that? That I'm trying to set a level playing field, to a foundation for this committee to be functional. If we don't get your input today, we need it in 2 weeks. And 2 weeks after that, until we come up with a solution that can generate revenue quickly while we're chipping away at you guys, which will take years. I'm pointing to the state. So your thinking caps are on. I hope we can talk about some solutions today.
Just a clarification, the main revenues for roads is from gas tax and property tax?
I'll let Lisa answer that one.
For roads, it is the gas tax, but our road department maintains roads. They don't build roads. And it takes all that money for them to take care of what we got.
This is amazing.
Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and if you're like me, you're going to be shocked at the answer. The money that our road superintendent gets for roads is strictly for maintenance of those roads.
1,000 miles.
Okay. And then stop and think. For every subdivision that you guys build, that we ultimately take over the roadway system, he has to pull those into his pool. Yet he's just kind of getting the same amount of money every year. So we're absorbing those roads as well. But here's
money has got to be increasing the amount of people coming in and out, but also we had an increase in gas tax, so some of that's there. But my question would be is what's the amount of, where is the allocation for new roads? Is there not one?
That's the.
There's never been one.
No, this is what just gets me all the way to the brainstem, is we do not have a fund for the planning commission. Jim and I are on the planning commission. Ron is on the planning commission. We're getting ready, I'm sorry, Pettis is on the planning commission. We're getting ready to launch another update to our long-range comprehensive plan. We need it. We need the vision. We need to see where we're going to branch out, where these tentacles are a smart move for our roadways, and then growth. I stood up at the full commission and said, this is great. We don't even have a fund where we put money aside to build new roads. Can you believe that?
No.
I was shocked.
We borrowed for roads.
Yeah.
We've done a Halls Hill Pike.
We could choose to do a road project at this year's budget and then have conversations and then put it in next year's budget and take it from wherever else that budget might have gone otherwise. We may hold up building a school and that money may have gone into the Halls Hill Pike. We go to the bond market, we buy it, we pay the debt service with existing money. So all of our money is spent. If we chose to
So we're
supplement
highly
it,
leveraged on new buildings.
repeat that
We're
please.
leveraged on building new roads. We're borrowing money at a pretty, and then moving what's in our current budgets around to pay for that debt service on the road.
Simple enough, just keep it real high
That's
level.
very simple, yes.
The road board has 1,000 miles and their mission, constitutional mission is to maintain the roads for the public good. So it's maintenance. Greg took $3 million, the superintendent took $3 million from ending fund balance to improve roadways at around the Christiana School property. And so he did $3 million of a $7 or $8 million anticipated project. He just gave the county $3 million this year.
Well, he's going to, his people are going to do it. They're going to improve those roads.
And so he's pulling off their mission of maintenance and are doing a project that wasn't even on their radar.
Project improvement with maintenance dollars.
Correct, correct. And we can't sustain that. We could do that once or twice, but not long-term.
But that's basically.
And so we're kind of contemplating, with your input, is how could we create that road fund without taking 75% from the schools and school debt. Okay, there's 75 cents. Now we've got 25 cents to pay for public safety, solid waste. We can run through the list of every committee we have.
Right.
And so, and I want to, so we've tried to be frugal, and then at the end of squeezing that fruit, there's new roads. It's a whole nother topic. Can we fund it? And can the folks building our new roads or building our new projects or selling the new projects participate this time? And hence you're spitballing with us now, so.
And I think there's a point, if I can interject here, something that we talked about at our last meeting that was shocking to me. And this goes back to your question that you just asked, and I think everybody in this room is going to be shocked. That gas tax is, of course, divided up amongst all the counties in the state. However, this formula for the way they divide it is not based upon the amount of gas that's sold in your county, or maybe only slightly it is, but here is a way that the way that money is distributed that in my mind is wrong, and we don't have the power to change it. Wayne County, Tennessee, have you ever heard of it? I don't even know where it is, it's so small.
Waynesboro.
They have land mass of 734 square miles. Rutherford County has 619 square miles. So we're just a little bit smaller than they are. We have 970 miles of county roads. They have 781 miles of county roads. So less roads than we have. Our population is 325,000 roughly. Their population is 16,000. Roughly. Now I'm going to quote 16,000 people. So we are 20 times larger in population. However, quoting from this report, based on the current distribution basis of county gasoline tax, Wayne County receives the same or more fuel tax than Rutherford County. based on 75% of the current distribution formula. Now, how in the world is that fair? This is where the large growth counties are having the problems.
And why the small counties are saying.
And yes, and it goes back to what Tim says, is we're battling 75 other counties in the state that are saying, oh no, we're happy the way the system's set up now, we don't want to change it. But we don't have an outlet.
They get a lot more money.
Sure.
But if we brought that,
That's somewhat deceiving because the TDOT has a vast amount of money they can allocate for special projects. Like there's $2.12 billion worth of TDOT roads in Rutherford County going on right now. And they've either been funded, that's currently underway on all the state highways, or about to start. So that's a lot above that allocation.
And we love those state highways, but we can't necessarily.
And I get demands
depend
for
upon-
intersections and traffic lights, and I do studies and all that all the time.
We can't
Sometimes
put all
I get
of
them,
our homes
sometimes I
on state
can't.
highways either, is our issue. And I think what's coming down the pike here for our county, I made my career in living in satisfying the demands and the needs of families to have a home. Whether it be the people that were born and raised here, and then now they have a family and they need a home, which was the bulk of them, but there were also people moving in. That doesn't make me the bad guy. I was I didn't cause the growth. I just reacted to the growth. But what I'm seeing is happening now is we're coming to a breaking point where I see the people coming in behind me are not going to have the opportunity to build homes for these families, and these families that are growing and being raised in this county are not going to have a place to live. They're going to be stuck in apartments or whatever, or have to move further out when they're going to be working here, and this is where their roots are, but now they don't have a home to raise their families in. And it's up to us. It's our responsibility to find a way around it. And we beat this to death. We're kind of hog-tied, and we've got to come up with a plan here.
And Phil, thank you for eloquently rehashing our issue and getting the band back together. I appreciate that. My feel, I guess, is much more urgent, and that's really because as one that sits on the Planning Commission, we see all these subdivisions come. I mean, 3 or 4 every 2 weeks, man. It's 3 or 4, and they're anywhere from 200 to 300 or 400 homes, right? And they're being pushed out in where the land is cheap and the roads are bad, and they want to put all these homes on roads that are inadequate. And we're thinking, this just is not right. The infrastructure does not support it. And legally, we can't really turn them down. And all we're doing is compounding the problem. And every month, it is painful for us
to approve another one, knowing that there's no answer, knowing that we are neutered by the state, that we can't even control our own destiny on how to pay for what we need to pay for because of this extreme growth. We all got a copy from the mayor last week. The school board sent out their 2020-21 capital improvements request. Are you sitting down? $63 million. 2 years, capital. Our development tax brought in, Lisa left. Our development tax brings in $6 million. If we up the wheel tax, get this, if we up the wheel tax $10, that's only going to get us $2.5 million. We don't have, where are we going to get the dough?
Phil says it much better than I do. I'm more direct. Sorry, guys. I'm more direct. I'm old. I got antique blonde hair. I'm more direct. Where are we going to get the money? We got a room full of smart people. We need your help. And I wish we could get it solved by 1 o'clock, but Phil is right. That's not going to happen.
Do we want to create, can this become just a open dialogue, a working session?
Yeah, it may have to.
And get feedback from mayors? How do y'all, if I could pick on Smyrna or acknowledge Smyrna, y'all have a better communication with the state? How do you do it? Does Brian pick up the phone?
It's something that we have made a conscious effort when Brian came, that we wanted to have a better working relationship and that we couldn't count on them. It was as much our fault as their fault for not communicating as well as we wanted to. And it was easy for us to sit in our chairs and to say, well, we never hear from them. Well, you know what? Communication goes both ways. And so we have started doing, before each session, getting together, and Brian has driven this. And putting a presentation together to let them know what are our key issues here in the town of Smyrna and what can they help us legislatively in regards to that.
And that's beyond just the TDOT. We all seem to pursue TDOT.
I mean, it's
holistic.
so many things. I mean, we're expanding our wastewater treatment plant. I mean, it's state revolving fund things. It's all of the things. And here's the thing that we need from them, not just communication with us. And the votes they make on the floor are important. But do you know what's more important? The relationships they have with those departments. So they can go talk to the people in those departments when we have a problem or an issue.
TDEC, solid waste.
All of it.
FEMA, whoever.
All of it.
Okay.
So Brian has worked really hard at communicating, and not just communicating during those meetings that we have. We're getting ready to have another legislative breakfast with them, but it's also during once a month or session, and our lobbyists help with that too.
Lobbyist. Smyrna lobbyist?
Yes.
Yes.
We discussed that a
We
few
did
weeks
discuss
ago.
that.
Y'all took it upon yourselves to engage and put in your budget.
We've had one
a
2 years now.
representative.
2 years.
2 years now.
Okay, interesting.
And here's the thing. Brian has so much to do day to day, and a lot of people don't realize that the mayor's positions, other than Mayor Ketron, are part-time positions. I mean, I'd love to, and I'm sure the others here would love to have a lot more time to be able to devote.
Yeah.
I don't know
Gotta
what's
make a living,
going
Jason,
on
don't you?
all the time on the floor. And so that's what that lobbyist is there to help us with, to say, hey, here's what you got coming up. And they send us something on a weekly basis to say, what do you want us doing? What do you want us looking into? That's been very beneficial to us.
That sounds like a smart investment.
Well, and on the other side of that too is we hear things, then we can work back through the lobbyist to track down. Because a lot of times it may not be associated with one of our legislators that we can pick up the phone and call. It may be something coming out of East Tennessee or West Tennessee, but it's going to impact Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
So that lobbyist has those relationships to go deeper into the.
Sure.
To give you an example, like the city of Murfreesboro, they call us when it's something critical, but for the most part, they just don't call us. They don't bother us unless something's really needs done, like when TDOT was doing the Salem Highway widening in front of World Outreach. That used to be a wetland there, and when they were expanding it, the TDOT, whenever they cover up a wetland somewhere, they have to recreate it somewhere else. They just don't pay a penalty or buy wetland. They physically have to create wetland. It could be in Knoxville because they tear something up in Smyrna. They have to replace it somewhere. So they said they were going to all in front of World Outreach, they were going to recreate that as a whole big wetland instead of just that creek area. Well, the city didn't want to have to maintain it, and World Outreach didn't want it, so they met with them, we met with them, they talked, and we sat down at the same table, and they decided that it'd be better for Smyrna and everybody. They moved that new wetland, I think, to Chattanooga, where they were doing another road project, and they could just expand a wetland they were already creating there. So we worked that out, but It's certainly, recently I've been reaching out to the city of Murfreesboro and been talking one-on-one with some of the commission of the city councilman and the mayor. And they've been telling me stuff that they haven't been contacting, like long-term what they need, like we need Memorial widened all the way to Walter Hill. Luckily, the bridge is already widened to handle the traffic, but nobody's mentioned it. And there's procedures involved. So when I met with TDOT, everybody said, why do I go and tour 440 in Nashville? Well, it gave me an opportunity to spend 4 hours with TDOT. And I went to their headquarters and their facility and the commissioner, and we sat around a table, and I said, you know, Murfreesboro is going to need, I asked the chief engineer, the number 2 guy at TDOT, they said, well, Murfreesboro knows they have to fill out the paperwork. They fill out the paperwork and get the process started. It may take 5 or 6 years before we can address it. Then if they want to speed it up, they can take, like Smyrna did on Sam Ridley, they're paying for part of the widening of Sam Ridley and managing the project. So it moved it up rather than it taking 10 years, it probably cut it in half or more. So there's ways to do it. But like I said, it's open dialogue, goes both ways. Usually the only time we're contacted is we're lectured to and we're screamed at and yelled at and we're the only option, and that's not a good communications. And then as far as MTAR, I've been a realtor for 21 years and I've been state rep for 3. MTAR's never contacted me about an issue, except occasionally even MTAR from all of the state, they will come up to the Capitol once a year and have a luncheon and ask all the state reps to come in and explain what's going on, and they have their stuff in real estate industry they talk about. So, you know, it's Smyrna. Not only have we met with them at City Hall and set up meetings with TDOT and addressed TDEC, and we're addressing the emissions right now, trying to get rid of that the commission wanted, and that's a process that should be completed by 2021. We're in phase 2 of 3 phases we have to go through. But they also come up once or twice a year to actually come up to Cordell Hall to the Capitol, and we set up meetings and with TDOT or TDEC or other things. So they've done an excellent job of reaching out. It's not just that, I mean, it's like she said, it is a two-way street. We don't know what your needs are, and it's beyond just funding. There's other things you need that we have to do, and usually the county mayor just contacts our office, whether it's a bridge naming or help with a widening or to take care of an environmental concern or do a rule change to schools or something. Usually the county mayors just contact us. And then sometimes if it's a major thing, we require the county commission to pass a resolution. And that doesn't mean we'll take it up, but we usually address something major when the county commission of the body sets an official request. And the city of Murfreesboro has done that too. I don't know if Smyrna's actually passed a resolution asking us to change a law. So, like it is a two-way street.
Okay.
What are you doing to get with the other large counties? Because they're going through the same things. So I know Steve is at our monthly meetings for GNRC and Transportation Policy Board. Those mayors are at those meetings. And I don't know if y'all started working together. You know, the legislators are going to listen when it's a group of people mainly rather than one person or one county come in. And I would think you talk to Mayor Hutto, it sounds like, but there have to be others that are dealing with this too.
Sure. That was part of my notes with y'all's conversation. We're recreating the wheel to some extent.
But we need to get out of Rutherford County.
Correct.
We need to look at the other, and GNRC meeting once a month that Mayor Ketron's there is, I think, a nice opportunity.
That's why I mentioned earlier it might be good for I always use the term 14, because there are actually 14 counties growing, but the 10 you talked about, all of them get together to help us. If you see, we can come up to, and I can go to Wayne County or some other county and say, we need more revenue in Rutherford. And they said, well, we want something for our new gymnasium or our new stadium or something like that, or we want this or want that, or we need a new bridge over the river. All right, but it's hard for me to say the pain you're going through because I'm not a county commissioner and I don't have to make the decisions. You were in a different legislative body. It would help that if we're going to have legislation that's going to affect the high growth counties or all the counties or some of the counties, that's one way to compromise. Don't take that authority away from the rural counties, but just affect it some of the high growth counties. It may be only 5 counties want us to change the Powers Act, and the rest of them they just leave alone. But when we do that, we need you to come up as a body and have 200 or 300 people or 70 people, or whatever, 100 people from 10 counties come up and tell all those other legislators from the non-growth counties what you go through, the pain you go through, and you can describe it, the decisions you have to make, and the shortfalls you have, and your options, how they're limited, and that'll help us convince them. Otherwise, it can just fall on deaf ears, because they don't want to give up that power, or maybe their commissions don't want that, because that's their excuse not to have to vote on it. So we just need help too. And also keep in mind, we're in session, like we go in session January 14th of next year. We're in there through usually the end of May. But we have till mid-February for bill cutoff. After that, we're there, but we can't do much more. And then when we're out of session, we can't, other than calling the departments and the executive branch and TDOT and all that, get stuff done within the existing laws. We can't pass any laws or new legislation. And the state budget's in, was it July 1st or middle of July when it takes effect? So from year to year, so we need time to get with legal to write legislation and to lobby. That's why I said sometimes we can write legislation or start the legislation this year, but we'll say come back, if we run it, it's going to die. We need another year to convince people. But we can go ahead and write it now. And that's another thing, our session lasts 2 years. We can write legislation that can stay in the system for 2 years, but after that it's dead and we have to rewrite it. So, and next year will be the second year of a 2-year session. So it'll be our last chance to pass something without starting from scratch again. So just give us a heads up and let us know.
Mr. Chairman, I think from the discussion that we had last couple of weeks ago and today, the general consensus is that I think the climate is there for the transfer fee situation. And my finite mind says that there's strength in numbers, and we need to focus on one thing, and we need to focus on getting more support for the legislators through all the other mayors and things of that nature. So it seems like we may just be boxed into one situation that we can look at to kind of relieve this situation as far as the private act is concerned. You know, work on that.
Yeah, well, I initially, a transfer fee sounds really appealing. It also helps one of the problems we have in planning is affordable housing. You know, a development tax or piling on to a development tax raises the cost of new roofs, which is basically a pass-through cost now to a new home buyer, which makes it even less affordable for someone trying to qualify or buy a home if you're in a position that's a struggle. We talked about a transfer fee. The Powers Act deems it illegal, so we can't even talk about it until the Powers Act gets changed. But that would affect the cities. The trade-off would be we would have to phase out or eliminate a development tax. We certainly would have to, we'd certainly want one in play before we eliminate the other, so we don't get caught, you know. There's certainly money to be made with a transfer fee. A lot more money to be made with a transfer fee.
Did Jim's number indicate it was a lot more money?
Yes. Well, it depends on how much pennies per
penny,
a nickel versus 25
what the rate is, and you'll need somebody a whole lot smarter than me to run that math.
Yeah, but certainly the cities would have to participate.
So are you thinking that the transfer fee would be in lieu of an impact fee?
Yes, sir.
For both the city and the county?
Yes, sir.
Wait, what does the city have to do?
The city.
What are you going to replace
What are you going to replace our impact fee with?
But their impact fee is independent. I thought we've got.
Go ahead.
We've got a county impact fee of $1,500.
Right, and that's what I,
It would only,
That would have
it would
to be
only be that
removed.
impact fee.
Okay.
Not your own.
Okay, that's
Okay,
right.
that's what.
That would
that's
have to
what
be
I was-
removed from the county funds and replaced with another. We're not going to do both. I don't think we can do, there's some
You're
complications.
still in the, cities would still be independent of your own
Absolutely.
free will of
Right.
fees that we can't touch.
And I think MTAR word permeated through their enterprise that the transfer fee became a consensus last week with the business people that were in the room. Home Builder Association, developers, MTAR, excuse me, I'm seeing some rebuttal to that.
If I might,
Yes, please do, Tim.
being that kind of here with some MTAR folks as well, the home builders, I think the discussion was there's got to be some shared burdens in what is it. I don't know that, and talking with some of the folks with MTAR since that time, in the past, they have opposed that. Now, that's not to say that they may still be opposed as a whole, but I think statewide as well as within the association, they've opposed that kind of thing. But again, I think, and again, Representative Rudd, thank you for your service, and I'm really glad to see all of these mayors here. There is it's a fact that we've got to look at all the options, and there may just have to be some structural change within the legislative end of it to really come about what's best. Is it looking at, if you talk about development tax and where it is, it's not, y'all have already talked about it's not adequate, it's not growing, it doesn't adjust, it doesn't, it's the same fee regardless of the size of the house. It's going to drive up, if in a time of recession, that revenue is going to go down. If you employ a much more governors to the to the situation to tamp down growth, that only it's going to cause that to even more revenue. So I think that this is a great thing. I think that what is being done here needs to be more or less a roadshow, because the general public needs to know where we are with roads, where we are with growth, and all of those things, and the challenge. I think the association, the Middle Tennessee Association for one, and the Home Builders for another, represents about 8 different counties here into the south. So it affects an urban, fast-growing county. They're impacted there as well as in the rural counties that Representative Rudd and y'all talked about. So I think I can speaking for them. I don't know that they're on board. I don't know that realtors as a whole are on board with a transfer tax. But I think there has to be, some kind of way of coming about how we can make the best of it from maybe a combination of revenue sources. But again, there's just so many other things that y'all talked about that it's just not an easy answer. Right?
Thank you, and I assumed that y'all were here, I just had an assumption, and I was not going to say it, that y'all were here in opposition. So I should have been a little more sensitive with my saying there was a consensus. Yes, sir.
The reason that we're here is to find out, what do you mean by transfer tax? Okay, because you take a chance, the reason that it's illegal is because it's double taxation. Okay, and I don't know whether you guys understand all that or not, but I can get you some paperwork and some background on that so you can see where a transfer tax is not a fair tax. Okay, you're talking about increasing infrastructure for new development. Okay, a transfer tax is going to affect every house that's sold, even though those people have already paid that tax before. Okay, now you're asking them to, just as many old houses as new houses being sold. Okay, so now you're asking them to support it when they're not the impact.
Well,
Understood. Thank you.
I can give you some more backup to that, but nobody has a transfer tax anymore because it's just not equitable.
And we could layer upon layer in this dialogue. So, but your point strongly taken.
75% of the homes are sold or already exist.
And we were part of our conversation last week that kind of migrated out of the spitballing was, that was a source of revenue, not a detriment, okay? So that,
Right.
now y'all are providing some.
Exactly, we just want you to understand that that is taxing people more than to increase the property tax. Okay, so you're going to get just as much pushback on that as you are anything else. Sure, it's an easy way to get money, okay, but it's not a fair way to get money. That's why it's illegal.
I think a multifaceted aspect, and we talked about some of them today, is, we have maybe some, I like the idea of coalition with other growing counties. I like, maybe there's something with the gas redistribution tax that can help a little bit. I don't know how much money that is. What does that look like? Is there a potential change in the development tax and what that impact can be? So I think we're open to, I'm glad we're having this conversation from everybody to see, okay, what are the different ways we can at least now have a dedicated fund for road improvement that's never been there.
That's definitely a good idea. Where it's going to come from, I don't know.
So,
And well, not to interrupt you, but Tim Tipps's opinion is this, because we're all going to drive, whether we've lived in the same house 20 years or we just bought a house, we're all getting to enjoy the roads. Our kids are getting to enjoy, getting to go to some first-class schools. And yeah, we don't like we don't want to pay anything more than we're already paying, regardless of what it is. But at some point, you can't have it all. So you got to pick. And if what taxes are, prohibited, obviously, that you can't do anything about. But still, I think it goes back to working within the framework of the counties and the state government and the city governments to come up with alternatives that can actually pass constitutional muster.
So the $3 million wheel tax would be one of a dozen components to generate.
And that's if you up to $10, you don't
Have y'all
get
quantified
in a multiple system.
the road? Have you quantified what your road costs are as an average? What kind of number are you trying to garner?
Yeah, that was part of last week's conversation that we didn't go back to. We need a target to shoot for, and probably somewhere around that we're still in.
that number's not been pinned down. We've asked that from Paul Maher.
Also, talking to Lisa a while ago, she did say that if a wheel tax was levied, of course, you've got the option of the county commission passing it twice, or referendum. But that could be, the formula could be changed to designate the $10 would be designated
to a new road project.
50% for road projects and 25% for the school, or whatever, 5% for general fund, whatever formula. But that could be brought out specifically what could be designated for.
But we need to attack your question. We need to have some targets, and we're going to clumsily get there. But that is critical. I think the engineering world, represented by Matt Taylor, among others, said you need a target. So,
well, I mean, that's one of the things we look at in our road, because we do have dollars associated directly towards the road project.
yeah, as does the city of
But
Martin.
we kind of know what our average spend is, and we build to that. So I think it makes it easier for people to associate why you're doing what you're doing when they know there's a target.
Yeah. It may be a few million a year to do a $12 million project.
Sure,
Or 16.
and we have,
a few more years.
when you have projects that may last, San Bernardino Parkway widening, which we should be starting in the next 90 days, that's a 2.5-year project. So I can budget that over a 2-year budget cycle, and I can work with TDOT on multiple year financing. So, there's that old adage, how do you eat the elephant, one bite at a time. Sometimes you have to take those bites.
I think Ryan wanted to jump in before we...
Did you? Something I don't think we mentioned that was in the last meeting was the Capital Investment Act for the sales tax that's already been presented last year and it's going into the second year as an option as well.
Capital investment
It was
tax.
the HB, it came in the last HB 124, that's the one.
Was it for growth, was it for growth?
For the growth, for the sales tax to be distributed to the growth counties, trying to redirect that.
Similar to the gas tax.
Yeah.
It have to be
I think,
It's already been presented last year, I think it's still on the.
I think, I have some documentation on that, and if it's the same thing I think you're talking about, that money has to be spent for public transit.
Because I know we brought that up at the last meeting as being possible.
On that multifaceted approach, we redistributed the gas tax, redistributed the sales tax, which we neglected to engage with, Ryan, and for some angles. And they're long-term. They're starting now to get 2, 3, 4 years out. Maybe we get some. And then we tackle the legalities of the transfer tax program. Those are the multifaceted.
I asked one suggestion, which I've brought up before, and I'd also ask where you're always talking about revenue, which I understand the need for revenue and the need for projects and everything. Also, I asked the county to look at whether it's concerning schools or what you can do with budget investments. Is there anything the legislature can do to give you more power to manage your money that you already have now better? That you may be locked in with a mandate or locked in with something you're not allowed to do, or more control over funds spent on schools or spent on roads or anything. Let us know if there's something we can do also to give you more freedom to manage your budget better and to manage your money better. To save, you could save dollars there too. I don't know if that exists, but I'm just saying, look at that too. If we can change laws to give you more power and more authority in how your money's spent. There's a lot of those mandates and requirements and stuff like that. Because I've been, we've got a fairly good working relationship with the county school board. They come to us and we talk to them a little. Is this
what you're talking about?
The 3 years I've been in office, they keep talking about mandates, and I said, I need a list of these mandates. I know they're there, but I need the dollar value, and I've not gotten a one. Now, I did go to the comptroller's office and asked them to estimate, and they said statewide there's about 110 million in county school mandates. It varies from area to area, but.
Like stormwater.
Well, no, you're getting into federal there.
All right, yeah, pick on the feds. We've got 4 minutes. May I please contemplate? I want to end with next action. I'm afraid we spent a lot of time talking again, and y'all, darn it, we're that's what it takes. Government's slow for a purpose, I guess, right, Mary Esther? And I want to take action. I want to be impulsive, and I need y'all to put me in check. If you think this was productive, if you can come back, whether we try to get legislators here, and I guess we really got some good feedback nonetheless. Heck, y'all, what do we do next? We've got a key meeting, because if we don't, darn it, we're just going to say in 2 years, in January, we got to go to the legislator and get some money. So in the meantime, would it behoove us to try to meet again? Would y'all be willing to talk amongst yourselves and look at MTAR and send a representative?
Yeah, do you want to?
Jason and Chad.
Do you want to appoint somebody as a representative that could officially attend these meetings and be your spokesperson, or?
We'd love to have you, Tim.
We would have to have a meeting to do that. We would have to have a meeting to do that.
Yeah, right.
Sure. Yeah.
Let me ask you, I don't know, does MTAR and the County and Builders Association, do they have a government liaison that works with the government? I know they got government to update what legislation on, but they actually have like a liaison that can stay in touch.
We have a committee. I mean,
maybe you need to appoint one person from each group just to communicate with them, the cities and the counties, and visit with them and see what's, get their feedback.
You have one from MTAR.
Scott Everything?
No, who's Tim's?
You referring to the lobbyists?
No, I'm talking about just from your association. It's the liaison that.
We just started last year of liaisons, and we met with commissioners in August. We just started establishing relationships, and we have various different ones that we've started through the Government Affairs Committee.
Okay. And you should have somebody that's contacting you.
We have lobbyists on the state level, yes.
Well, if y'all would perhaps do us the courtesy or maintain this collaboration and let's meet again in a couple of weeks. And even if the 4 or 5 of us, again, get together, we're committed.
This is your county too. Well, I mean, this just isn't us.
And if the, again, y'all's, I mean, I don't know if the mayors need to come back and participate or I don't know. Matt, if the engineers could come back again. RNA, if you guys could come back. I'd like to go ahead and announce this for 2 weeks from now, Rachel. If this committee is willing, if we need to skip a period, I don't know, but I don't want to lose the momentum.
I'm good for every 2 weeks.
But only if we could get some productive agendas and some productive targets. But if y'all could give us some time to help hone that down to where we could use your time effectively, or you know, if you guys are going to
move the ball forward.
Your daily work.
Going to move the ball forward.
I think Rhonda had something.
Yeah, Rhonda, you're certainly recognized. And could you share your name of your lobbyist? And is he like a full-time dude or gal?
He has a company that he represents us and some other folks.
Would he be somebody that you might recommend that we chat with?
Yeah, I just don't know what he can do with already representing us. I don't know if there's any conflict there that he'd have to look at, but I'm happy to share.
He may have somebody, he may have a
We may have to meet with
friend.
all the lobbyists, yours and yours, and it could be an interesting conversation.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
This is really directed to the home builders developers, because I really want your honest feedback on this. There's been an idea inside the Planning Commission that we have struggled with, listened to, learned about over 3-4 years, and have never taken action on it, and it is the idea of identifying roads and categorizing them into traffic sheds. And for those of you who don't understand what that is, basically, it's an elaborate equation. It's not that straightforward at all, but the idea is that if several of you own farms along the road, you identify what the capacity of that road is, and you allocate X amount of traffic to each one of those farms. And so with the road in the condition that it's in, you can only develop up to what your allotment has been. And if you want to develop more than that, you have to improve that road. And so we've talked about escrow accounts and putting money into that, having you set aside so that you're not improving an entire road yourself, or you're not improving part of it. Because currently all you can do, all we can ask you to do is to improve the part that touches your property. Well, that doesn't fix the problem of you being 8 miles, off the interstate and being, deep in an area that's not really supported for that. So we haven't enacted that. We haven't moved on that because we've wrestled with it ourselves. But again, to your point, we're looking for equity. We're looking for an equitable solution that's fair to everybody, because unfortunately what's happening is it's kind of first come, first serve. And if you're the guy furthest away from the interstate and you develop, you get yours going pretty good. Well, by the time more and more traffic gets on that road, it's the last guy who's caught having to pay the bill for that whole road section. So again, equity is absolutely all that we're striving for. And we don't have the answer to that. We haven't figured out what the answer to that is. And so I'm really hoping in having you guys in the room, you can help us figure that out.
Have you talked to Williamson County about that?
See, they're the only ones who have it, which is part of the reason.
We have
talked to them because they don't like it.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've had it for like 20 years, right?
Right, and they are not happy with it.
They're stopping it.
You need to look into that.
It's
It
a good
sounds,
tool.
once again, it's like transfer tax. It sounds easy, but it's not.
It's not easy, and that's been part of the reason that we've not moved on it. So, again, equity.
The way that they use it is not useful. So the concept itself is a good concept, but the way that they use it is not useful. If you turn it around and apply it to some real world numbers and say your responsibility of this, your portion is this number of dollars per lot, you can use that. It is not useful the way that they use it. All it does is promote eating farms and sprawl in Williamson County. And so that is all that is accomplished over there. You could use that concept much better than what I've seen them use it.
I think it could be a really good tool to generate some traffic assessment districts or something. There's some good science there, but it can't be applied to lot counts necessarily. Williamson County gave us some pretty good feedback on that. They have every intention, according to what they shared with us, that they want to cease it. It has, because the positives, having outweighed the negatives and how it was implemented.
Although Wilson
It's a
County
good
just,
tool.
Wilson County just said that they're looking into it now, so, or exploring it now. Matt or others, the city makes the developer put up some escrow for road frontage. Does that anything that could work for the county?
I think so. I will tell you what the city does. They have a per linear foot of frontage number that they use, and that's based on their recent construction projects. But with almost every project, you've got either left turn lanes or right turn lanes or some sort of public improvement, and so that number comes off that escrow, as it probably should. If you're making physical improvements, you probably shouldn't be levying a fee for the property in front of.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times those will balance out, and the developer is probably actually putting in more improvements than what he was going to be due to do that frontage. But the assessment district idea to assess more global, more regional problems is a much more realistic and target in my mind, because an intersection 2 miles away, while your traffic is going to contribute to it, the existing houses that didn't contribute anything and the future houses are also going to overload that intersection. It's not one guy, and that's how it is right now. And those should be regional problems solved by government. Government should be here, in my mind, to solve problems that the private guy can't, and things like that. My guys can usually accomplish anything in front of their property. If they got to install a signal at their property, they got to do turn lanes, they can take care of those problems. They can't fix something 2 miles away.
Good point.
I do have just one last question, and that is, Tim, if the legislature were to allow Rutherford County to opt out of the County Powers Relief Act, which I believe was a resolution that we had submitted to them at one point, requesting that you just let us out of it and let us figure out what our own solutions would be. How is that taking anything away from those other counties? The thing that you said that's a hard sell, how is that a hard sell?
Because the other counties may not want to do that. They may not either. And I'm not just talking about the legislators. The county commissions may not want that burden.
No, I'm saying just let us out.
That's what I'm saying. But everyone, when they say, well, that gives my county, or that gives another county that want to do that, they may not want to do that.
Gives a sense of precedent, is that what you're thinking?
So it's not, you say, well, it just affects Rutherford. Sometimes we've got a lot of special acts for Rutherford, for schools and for government and the purchasing and stuff like that. But that's part of it. They say, well, no, that's a bad example. We don't want to do that. A lot of times it's the other county commission and the legislator's district that don't want that responsibility. So that's where some of the resistance comes.
I've got to think that special counties with special growth and population explosions like we had ought to have schemes that require special consideration.
Some flexibility.
Yeah, I've got to think that. To me, it makes common sense, and again, that may be where I'm all.
I'll just keep one thing in mind. This has been not everything we're discussing here, but problems and growth in schools and special acts and all this is. Rutherford County has not just experienced sudden growth right now. You've had the same percentage, same massive growth for 30 or 40 years. It just keeps going. Of course, it keeps getting more because you keep growing more. But percentage-wise, we've been massive growing, adding new schools, and it's your pain that you're suffering. And because, like I said, unlike most other legislators, I've been around a long time in politics, and I've sat in this room back in the 1990s, and they were discussing many of the same things.
Well, and it could be the same problems that nobody's fixed. And this commission is got the willpower and the fortitude to say enough's enough, let's fix it. That's what we want to do. We want to fix it. Let the problems of the past.
Well, like I said, write down some proposals and let us look at what we can and start spreading around, start talking to people.
Okay.
Because right now it's hard for me to say what exactly, how's it going to be written, what exactly you asked him for, what's the resistance. And I advise you, rather than just say it's between you, your body, and us, you need to include all the other people that's involved here. The building industry and the realtors and the general public too, because unfortunately, with the rare exception, affordable housing in Rutherford County is dead. It's gone because of land values. The Evergreen Farms, the 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-car or 1-car garage homes for under 200, that's becoming a thing of the past because of land value. And if you top on more and more taxes, our children aren't going to have a place to live either. That's why apartments are springing up everywhere, because they can't build affordable housing.
Right, and that's unfortunate. And that's why I'm not a big fan of loading up more development taxes, because that's why I kind of thought the transfer fees made it a little more equitable, because you're not piling on to affordable, or you're not pushing that affordable housing. You're bringing that more into play.
Now, if the land values were far less than they are right now, you'd probably be sending over 4,000 to 5,000 affordable homes built a year in the county too. But that's what really built Rutherford County's affordable homes.
And I've got a call this. I think we need to be consistent, so you'll come back. So we need to hold it to one. So respect.
Okay.
What's action?
The action is, do you have a calendar in front of you, anybody?
The 12th.
The 12th? All right. Is
Day
that-
after Veterans Day.
All right, November 12th. Let's do that, 11:30, room 205. Rachel, if you'll send out a media request. You're all invited. If you all want to chat and maybe elect a point person from MTAR, from whoever, maybe this committee has some representatives from all those different.
Tim, can you be back? Is Tim already gone?
Yeah. And then we'll chat about lobbyists. We'll chat. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
All right, got the mayor's office the 12th, so some of the mayors probably won't be here.
Okay.
Just thought I'd let you.
You know, if they want to come back, if it's not productive,
They may not,
I don't expect you to. If you can be productive.
Mike, was Doug going to work on a number, Demosi going to work on a number for us for projected
Yes.
needs? What kind of money we're
Yeah,
talking
for
about?
highway dollars, yes, he was.
Hopefully we can have that
Yeah.
next meeting.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions or want to email me, feel free to do so.
A motion for adjournment.